welcome you to the C&C Auto Show. I am Aaron Clements, here with co-host Jim Pate, and we are on remote at Augusta Aviation, which is located at the Daniel Field Airport here in Augusta, Georgia. And we are actually sitting in a flight simulator.
Yep, no TSA, no long lines. You walk right up.
Yes, and we are ready. We have a flight instructor nearby, and the flight instructor is Chris Young. He's the chief flight instructor here at Augusta Aviation, and right now and during today's show, we're going to be talking about all types of opportunities in the aviation industry. And I think it's important that everybody knows all the wonderful things you do, because sometimes when we think of aviation, we only think of the pilots, we think of the charter pilots, we think of the flight instructors, but we don't think about all the many other things that goes on in the aviation industry as far as opportunities go. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today. James here is going to be helping to keep everything moving.
Yeah, the good thing is I don't know a whole lot about this, so I might have questions. How about that?
Well,
Sounds good.
You know, that's the reason I love this, because every single week I learn new stuff. Chris Young, Chief Flight Instructor, Augusta Aviation, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming out. We're over here at Nashville, Tennessee. A little bit better weather than we got today in Augusta. So if you want, we can kind of jump in the plane and we'll just take you out flying. I watched a YouTube video last night, so I should be able to handle this pretty well. But yeah, let's jump in and we can kind of show you what all this does. One
quick thing I want to ask you before we get started, because I'm going to be flying with you here, and I want to be sure. How long have you been a flight instructor?
Coming up on 2 years.
Yeah. What's your favorite part about being a flight instructor?
Definitely on like those first flights, taking someone up and just seeing that excitement in their eyes, when they realize, oh wow, I can actually fly this thing, and it really happens within the first, 20, 30 seconds when you go to take off that first time, and they can make the plane take off and fly straight, and I'm not touching anything on the controls other than just supervising. And when they realize that realization is really powerful and just exciting. It really starts to, it opens up a whole lot of opportunities and just avenues for them to go and just explore.
Yeah, that first time that you're taking a lesson and all of a sudden you land and the instructor just jumps out and says, "She's all yours," closes the door. Oh, it is such an awesome feeling. You never forget it.
Yep.
All right, hop in.
Cool.
Let's fire this flight simulator up.
Yeah, he did bring you some beautiful skies, which we're not enjoying here today.
Yeah. So we have this set up to go to Nashville. Is that correct?
So we are actually at Nashville International as we speak already.
Oh, so you're already sitting there. Okay. And this looks very realistic.
I don't see any peanuts. Where's the peanuts?
Sorry, I got to fly the plane and be the flight attendant at the same time.
Only when you sit on a tarmac for 3 hours, they might bring you water.
You got to pay extra for the peanuts. All right, this is absolutely amazing. It looks so realistic.
And Aaron, just let me know, like the nice thing about teaching in the simulator, we're a sim-based program here, so we start all our students out on the simulator. The great thing about it is we got a pause button and a volume button. So, when you're flight instructing and you're out there for 6-7 hours at a time, speaking over the loud engine noise, wind, gets tedious. So being able to come in here on a flight instructor, in the simulator and have the air conditioning, if we need to hit the pause button to kind of explain a concept, is great. Also having that volume button where I can kind of make the engine go up and down. So in flight, if there's something that I want you to kind of see or hear that we do to the engine that, changes that tone where I really want you to like audibly hear it, not necessarily just like the visual component of it, it's easy to just drop that volume down and the student can hear and kind of pick up on those little clues that may not be just, visually, but something, that audible sound. Is something wrong with the engine? Are we going faster, slower? Are we climbing or descending? Just based on the sound of what the engine's doing. So it gives them a lot more insight, and just increases their situational awareness. And at the end of the day, it really increases the safety where they can start picking up on those like auditory clues that, a lot of time early on in flight training, if you start out on the plane, you're just so task saturated just to begin with, just the act of flying it. Mm-hmm. They just aren't picking up on all that little stuff. So to be able to kind of slow things down and kind of really focus like, hey, here's something that we do. And if you listen, you're going to hear the engine, if we turn the mag down, we're going to hear like just a little tiny change in the engine sound, and we're going to see an RPM difference.
And that's exactly what you're looking for when you're testing that before takeoff.
Right. So we're sitting here. I think we're on runway, what is it, probably 20 to center at Nashville International, I think. So if we want, we can just take off. So
yeah, let's take off, do one
flying.
circle, and then I'm going to let James jump in.
Yeah, I'll teach him how to
it's
fly.
so realistic. We're actually moving. The aircraft feels very much like you're going upward.
Right.
Right. So you can feel this simulator's full motion. It's 1 of 2 in the state of Georgia. So it actually has pitch, yaw, and roll. And it's just flight characteristics. So it is full motion. So when you pull the nose up, you can feel that we are, in a climb, not just seeing the visual effects changing. But we can also feel that if we put on the rudder pedals, we can feel the plane yawing, both left and right. So it gives the student a really good opportunity to kind of experiment with some things where, you get in a plane, you're unfamiliar with it, especially if you're not like super mechanical, where you may end up, not fully, deflecting a control surface ever in your flight training, or, even just flying day to day. But being in the simulator, and where if you wanted to, you could really, go full left, or like really stomp down on a rudder and make a little bit more aggressive control, just because, the risk is a lot lower in a sim.
Mm-hmm.
It's just good for them to experience that and see what the aircraft is doing, and be comfortable with that. And so know that when they get in the aircraft, if they ever have to make a little bit more of a standard than usual control input, they're not afraid to do that, and they've kind of experienced what the effect of that is on the flight.
See, when I was flying many years ago, they had none of this. If I wanted to experiment with some maneuver, I had to do it in a real airplane. This takes a lot of the anxiety out, and plus it's bound to be a lot more cost effective, so you can get a large amount of your training without actually being in the air. You can really fine tune your skills, and then when you do go in the air, you're much more proficient.
Right. And and with ours, we do have a letter of authorization from the FAA to apply any of like our training hours towards ratings. So the big one where this one really improves it and saves a lot of money is on the commercial certificate. So with the letter of authorization, the FAA states that we can apply 50 hours of simulator time into the commercial rating. So you can hypothetically have a commercial pilot coming out and graduating flight training to be able to get paid to fly at 220, 210 hours. Due to the fact that they can use 40, 50 hours of the simulator time legally to qualify for that rating, which is a huge cost saver, just on the airplane rental, and just the experience and time that they can do, and the amount of things that we can do in this. One of the things I always love showing students is, if you kind of see me like bopping around on my phone, is we can control all the weather and environment from our, I generally bring a tablet, not my phone. So, we can add turbulence on there if we want to get the weather a little bit more realistic, because, again, I've never seen a day this clear in my life. But, again, just right there, it pops in. And this is more like kind of your Augusta, Georgia weather, where it's a little bit more of a hazy environment.
Before we go to our break, can I let James jump in here while we're moving, or is it
Yeah,
or you need to land first?
Let me pop it. And this is one of those benefits right here.
Oh, fantastic. James, you got to jump in there, man.
Pull the cord.
Yeah.
Just
jump
jumped
right
out.
in. It is really amazing. I love it.
One of the things that I think people can't see that I could see standing out here is it's just not these couple of screens in front of you. You've really got a 180-degree view. You look out the side, see what you're passing, see if there's anything you might be able to introduce air traffic and so forth. They really challenge the students once they start to accumulate some skills.
Right. Yeah, and just being able to go in, because once you get your private pilot certificate, the next thing you're going to go is learning to fly via instruments. So when you're flying in a cloud, for anyone who's ever flown in a small plane in a cloud, this is kind of what it looks like. And at that point, you're just looking at your instruments here, and they're telling you whether you're climbing, descending, or, out of control. And, that's the next big safety thing.
Right, another class of license, isn't it?
Right. So you take a whole separate test to gain your instrument rating, and at that point, that's the one I always encourage people. Even if you're just going to be out there as a hobby flyer, continue on, get your instrument rating, because really by the time you get it, you become so proficient at flying. The clear days, like the typical weather that you're going to fly in most cases, is just going to be like really relaxing for you, because you do become so proficient and so acclimated to being in the plane. All the radio calls become really good, and it just becomes smooth, and you get to enjoy the clear days a lot more.
Well, what we're going to have to do is hit that pause button for a second. Another good thing about the simulator, because it coincides with the scheduling of the show. So everybody stay in your seats.
And Chris, we want to say thank you very much, and we plan to take another ride very soon
All right.
with you, so don't go anywhere.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks
We'll
for
be
coming.
right back with more of the C&C Auto Show. We're going to be talking to a lot of aviation experts in different areas of aviation, and that's what this is all about. We want to shed the light on the many opportunities that are available in aviation, and you can give us a call, ask the question about cars. You can call and ask about aviation. The number is 800-224-9090. That's 800-224-9090. And this is something kind of special for me to be able to do. A person that I've admired for many, many years. The only thing is I'm going to have to talk to him about a crick he has put in my neck over the years.
Yeah.
Because I watch him very closely. And this is Gary Ward. Gary is an aerobatic pilot. One of the best, in my opinion. He had just so much precision involved in what he does. Gary, welcome to the C&C Auto Show.
Good morning, Aaron. Thank you.
Well, thank
Great to be
you
here.
very much for giving us a call. I think you had planned on flying in here this morning, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yes, I did. I was looking forward to it. I pulled out my R-44 helicopter last night and had it all ready to go and get down and get ready. I said, oh, it didn't look too good, and I saw it was pouring down rain at Augusta, so I had to cancel that.
Well, it was still great for you to give us a call, though, because that's I would have loved to have had one of these breakfasts with you and just sit down at the breakfast table. But we can still talk, we can still have fun, and you can still tell us some of the things that you do. I want to start out by saying that over the years, I have watched you so closely with the precision that you have in flying. It's a beautiful sight. It's almost like watching an artist at work. How did you get into to aviation, and how did you become an aerobatic pilot?
Well, I try to tell the short version if I can, but for some reason, when I was probably 12 years old, I developed an interest in airplane. I'm up in Lincoln, in Georgia, and there was nobody flying up here at the time, but I don't know what it was, but it was an uphill battle for me to even get my parents to let me go take lessons. But I did, and, that was an interesting story. I was taking lessons before I turned 16, and shortly after I turned 16, I had, the magic number was 8 hours back in those days. If you were a decent pilot, they would throw you in 8 hours. I showed up with 7.5 hours, and my regular instructor wasn't there, and Forrest Boshears was there, and he was tall and lanky. He was already a legend, and here I am, a 16-year-old kid. And he looked at my logbook, and I said, let's go flying. I never had flown with him, and flew with him for 30 minutes. And he pulled over on the far end, the farthest one away from the terminal. I think it was runway 9 at that time, I believe. And he started getting out. And then he said, try it by yourself one time. It's so funny. Nowadays they prepare students for solo. Back then it was just as a macho thing. They just got you ready and then let you go. And it was a blast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
But,
what I mentioned a little
I've never
bit ago,
pursued
that
it
some of the
professionally.
things that you do in aviation, you remember the rest of your life as far as flight training and things like that. You remember that today, and that was many years ago, and you still remember the time that Forrest jumped out of the airplane.
Vividly, yeah. Oh, absolutely, yeah. And you knew Forrest, and he was a legend. He's just tall, lanky, and golly, I was intimidated. I really felt bad for my regular instructor. His name it was a police officer, Kilpatrick, I believe was his name. And I felt bad, because, an instructor likes to solo their students. But what am I going to say? If Forrest Boshears tells me to go, I'm going.
And you mentioned you had a helicopter.
So, anyway.
Yeah. And what else do you fly?
Yeah, and, well, gosh, I have a Super Cub. I'm into the backcountry kind of stuff now with Super Cub, tricked out for backcountry flying, and it's got big tires on it. And that's a blast. I love all kinds of flying, but I had an opportunity here, about 7 years ago, with a friend of mine with an R-44 to get my helicopter ready. And
Wow.
listen, I'm telling on myself, but I was 75 at the time, and I'm 82 now, by the way. And so I just want to see if can teach an old dog new tricks, and I picked it up, and man, I love it. It's just a lot of fun. It's a different skill set, and anyway, I have also Aaron. You knew Al Patton, and the little Rose parakeet. He
Oh,
built,
yes.
tiny little biplane. I own that now, but I'm planning to sell it back to somebody in the Augusta area.
Gary, tell us a little bit about what you do as far as at air shows. You do a lot of flying at different air shows. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty much all over North America. I mean, I do a lot of shows south of the border. Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, Panama, Costa Rica, all down through there. And I've done a lot of shows in eastern and western Canada, and I've flown my aerobatic airplane, the MX-2. I've flown it to Alaska 7 times to do air shows up there. And so it's a time machine. It's a fast machine. It gets me across the country, but it's just been a blast to go to all these different places and meet so many different people. And I love the travel. I love the people that I meet.
Gary, when I talked to you yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, you were at Oshkosh during the week?
Yes, I was. Yeah.
That is just filled with the
4 days.
aviation. So you must be on fire right now.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, I love airplanes. I'm still passionate about it, and that's total immersion in aviation when you go there.
Yeah,
and I met a lot of friends there. Yeah,
and you just come back, and I think you made a stop through North Carolina, and then come back home right after that.
Well, actually, I drove to North Carolina out of Concord. I have some friends that have a Piper Malibu Mirage. That's a very sophisticated single-engine airplane and pressurized. And so 4 of us flew up, and we had a house rented and all good stuff.
Well, Gary, you have been great. I so much appreciate you giving us a call. I wish you could have been here, though, and us had breakfast together, but you have been great, and I appreciate all the things that you do as far as in aviation to bring so many smiles to so many faces, being able to watch you.
Yep, good to hear from you. Interesting story.
I appreciate what you're doing. Yeah.
Well, we appreciate it.
All right. Well,
have
thanks,
a
Aaron.
fantastic day, and thank you again. And we'll be back with more of the C&C Auto Show.
Goodbye.
I'm here with James Pate. We are live on remote at Augusta Aviation.
Yeah, hang on.
Yes, hang on. I was in the flight simulator. James was in the flight simulator, and we flew around Nashville for just a little bit.
Quick visit.
Lots of fun. We had a great time. And we're at Augusta Aviation, which is located at Daniel Field Airport. And we have a very special guest on the line with us. And this has been really exciting here. We talked to one of the chief flight instructors. We talked to aerobatic pilot Gary Ward, that's kind of amazing to me to get an opportunity to talk to him a little bit about flying. I've known him for many years, and just never, I don't get enough time to talk to him as much as I would love to, because he's always somewhere on at a flight show, at an air show somewhere. Okay, but today we have a C-130 pilot, Garrett Timmerman. And Garrett, welcome to the C&C Auto Show. And hold on, I got to bring you on board here. Hello, Garrett. Welcome to the C&C Auto Show.
Good morning.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
We can now. It was.
How are y'all doing?
It took a minute. We are doing great, and we sure do appreciate you calling in. Of course, you know that we're here at Augusta Aviation, and I feel like you have spent some time here at Daniel Field Airport with Augusta Aviation, if I'm not.
I did.
Tell us a little bit about.
I did. That's
how you got started in aviation.
Go ahead.
And what you do now.
I started my flight training career at Augusta Aviation back in 2017, and I was flying the same 172s, the Cessnas that they have on the line now, and got my private pilot's license in 2018 and began working on my instrument rating shortly thereafter, and found out that I was selected to be a C-130 pilot in the Air Force Reserve.
Wow.
So from then on until about now, I've been flying with the military full time. Right now we're flying the C-130 in Little Rock, Arkansas, and headed back to Marietta, Georgia here in the next few weeks. But it all started at Augusta Aviation.
Wow. What I'm going to mention to you, Garrett, that as far as military aircraft, my favorite non-fighter aircraft is the C-130. That plane is a workhorse.
It is. It's. I tell my dad the other day that it's like the 4-wheel drive Jeep of the sky. You can just let the doors off and put it in 4-wheel drive, and it'll go anywhere and do anything.
Yeah, short field takeoffs. They carry so much load, and they have they provide so many functions for us. Garrett, do you ever? You started here at Augusta Aviation. You started your career as far as training and things like that, and then you moved to where you are now. Do you ever walk up to the aircraft like in the morning and still go, wow, I can't believe I get to fly this thing?
I do, and it's a humbling experience. I mean, you talk about the amount of cargo that you can carry and paratroopers and all the different missions that the busiest airspaces that you fly into, and sometimes you just have to take a second to reflect and think about where it all started. And it wasn't all that many years ago that I was flying at Daniel Field in the pattern, learning how to land a 2,000-pound, 3,000-pound Cessna, and here we are looking at a 150, 200,000-pound cargo aircraft, and but all the basics of flying are all the same. It's just a lot bigger.
And Garrett, I believe I'm familiar with this craft from standing on the earth looking up at it. I think it's the one that is unmistakable when it's taken off and it's not too far above. It's got those 4 props on it. It's mammoth. It's not moving real fast, but it's loaded with something when it goes over. Typically, obviously, because it's not a commercial craft, it doesn't have any markings on it. It's just this monstrous plane at low altitude is a remarkable sight to see and something remarkable to hear. Am I on the right track here?
You're on the right track.
Yeah.
And Garrett, I was going to ask you, well, before I ask you this question, first I want to say thank you very much for your service that you give. That's
Yes, sir.
I realize that you guys that fly these airplanes, you're real heroes. And of course, I had the opportunity to meet and see and be friends with so many of the fighter pilots when I was in the Air Force, and you're all just true heroes in my opinion, no doubt. But if someone was interested in becoming a military pilot, what steps do you think they should take, and what would be a good first step for them?
Well, there's many different pathways to get to where I have gotten today, or to get to military flying. But for someone as young as in high school, I would say it all starts with being a great, well-rounded student, so good grades and community service. Another thing that is a requirement to be an officer in the Air Force is a 4-year college degree. So it doesn't really, the actual subject does not particularly matter. And then from there, there's many different paths. From the Air Force Academy is a great way to do it. College, Air Force ROTC scholarships are another great way to do it. And that's a way to have the Air Force fund your college degree. And then there's several other ways to do it after college, which is what I did. But I would say the best avenue of resources would be to reach out to an Air Force officer recruiter and just get a pamphlet of the many different pathways to military aviation, because, like I said, no two people are the same, and no two paths are the same either, and there's a million different ways to get there. But they all involve hard work and good grades.
Garrett, do you still get that beautiful feeling like if you take off from a runway on a beautiful morning, sun just starting to come up, and it's absolutely beautiful? Do you still get that same feeling you did many years ago?
Oh, I sure do. I'll tell you a quick story. We were flying the other night as the sun was going down in a formation of several other C-130s, and the leader that was in front of me was flying across the top of the clouds right at about 16,000 feet as the sun was setting down behind him, and I was just watching the wake vortices roll off his wingtips as the sun was setting, and it was the coolest thing you'd ever seen. So it's still just as awesome as it was when I first started flying.
That is so awesome. I tell you, once you get bitten by that bug, it's always there with you.
And when you travel like this all the time, you must really hate sitting in traffic on the ground.
You can say that again.
Yeah, we're not moving. Hey, Garrett, man, you have been awesome.
That's right.
And we really do appreciate you giving us a call and touching base and sharing some of your experiences that you had, but also sharing your love of aviation, because I think that it's just it's so many wonderful things involved, not only on the flying thing, but flight instructors, aircraft maintenance. There's just so many good opportunities there, and it can be a very good career. And congratulations to you on all the things that you've been able to do in the aviation field.
Well, thank you very much for your time. And like I said, I'd tell anybody that's remotely interested, it all started at Augusta Aviation. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I would recommend it to anybody out there. So, again, thank y'all for your time, and I hope y'all have a good rest of your morning.
Well, thank you very much. You going out flying today?
I'm not. I'm going to spend some time with the family today, but I'm going to be back at it on Monday.
Going to do a little severe clear on the ground.
Will you be
That's
safe
right.
and
right.
enjoy your flights.
Get caught up on chores.
Good for you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Garrett.
Bye
you
now.
too.
All right,
and
bye-bye.
we'll be right back with more of the C&C Auto Show. Augusta Aviation, located at the Daniel Field Airport here in Augusta, Georgia, here with James Pate.
Hey there.
All right. And James, we've been flying in the simulator. We've been talking to aerobatic pilots. We've been talking to C-130 pilots, flight instructors. Been having a great time. Lots of fun stuff coming on. And we are also taking automotive questions.
All day long.
So we will go over to Bob. Bob, welcome to the C&C
Hello.
Auto Show.
Well, thank you very much. I just wanted to talk about EV car. About a week ago in Atlanta, on the radio, they said, do not charge your EV car because it's too hot, and it will damage your battery. It'll charge, but it will permanently damage your battery. And also, this last Christmas, everybody experienced a very cold Christmas. But I was up in Sioux Falls, and they said if it's 20 degrees outside, your car will not charge. There's too much of a loss of power due to the cold temperature. So if you if your car's outside on the driveway and you're got the charger hooked up and it's 20 degrees outside, and you wake up the next morning thinking you're going to go to work, your car didn't charge overnight.
And that is a possibility. Now, I do know that it varies a lot from vehicle to vehicle. So, of course, that's a good question to ask if someone's interested in purchasing an EV vehicle, is to look at the climate that you live in or plan to drive in, and look at what the specifications are for charging or the temperature conditions to where you get a charge. I do know that even if it does recharge in the cooler or colder temperatures, that it will take longer, sometimes at least 2 times longer when it's really cold outside. And you're right about it being too hot. There's certain temperatures where a battery could overheat and that will permanently damage a battery if you charge it at certain times when it's too hot. Now, of course, there's cooling systems in the vehicle that keeps the batteries cooler, but again, that would vary a lot from vehicle to vehicle. So what you just did, you brought up another great suggestion, and that's that people do the research before they purchase the vehicle, because someone that lives in really, really cold temperature, they may find that it may not be the best option for them with a EV vehicle.
I'd say put your charger inside your garage. And overall, I'm glad I live in a country where we have enough rich people that can build such a thing and also experiment with it. So I'm thankful for that. But we're not ready for it yet.
I think
You have to have two
we
vehicles. You have to
do
have
need to
gas
do some of the
or electric.
things, the items that you mentioned, as far as even colder temperatures, when the temperature is really hot. Does it damage the battery? I think that we have a lot of research to go before we would be able to make the complete decisions on that. But I agree with you on that part. I love living in a country that we have those options to be able to experiment and do things to reach new levels of transportation.
Yeah, because that means even if you own one and you plan to go someplace distant from where you live, one of those other environment extremes could really compromise your ability or your understanding of what to expect from your car. And another story that I read about was that if you park one of these for a long time, over a number of weeks, and if you don't continue to cycle the battery and it just sits, that causes a premature death. And I think a new battery isn't like going down and getting your new Clarios.
No,
it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's new EV battery can be a big deal. But yeah, and I do again think a lot of these issues that we run into on one vehicle may not necessarily be the case on another vehicle. But Bob, what you're saying is 100% correct. We do need to continue to do the research. And we need to make decisions based off of facts, not emotions. So I think that's a great point that you bring up, and a great question considering the temperature recharging system.
Well, I'd like to make another point quickly. I remember I'm old enough to remember when the VCR first came out, and the first ones were the Sony Betamaxes, and they were like $1,000. Mm-hmm. And but you look at them now, you get the VHS for less than 100. So, I think we shouldn't give up. It'll all come around eventually.
Yes, and as time goes on, prices will come down, and I'm very, I would be very happy to see a lot of these breakthroughs that they're making on there, make the batteries lighter, make them be able to recharge faster, build the infrastructure better for the EVs, and you're absolutely right. Eventually, that will more and more of that will happen as time goes on.
Well, and it's also.
Thank you very much.
Yep, you bet.
Hey, Bob, thank you. We do appreciate your call very much, and let me do something right here. Okay. And you can give us a call, and the number is 800-224-9090. We are live here at Augusta Aviation, and we are that's located at the Daniel Field Airport.
And I think it must have stopped raining to some degree, because I hear planes coming and going outside now through the walls. So that's a good sign.
And I did want to mention an email real quick, and this is I always like to cover some of the emails that we get. And Sid is a regular listener to the show, and he has my cell number. He calls me sometimes when he's working on his car. And last weekend, he called and said that his coolant was low in his Lexus, and he wanted to know what type of coolant to add. Now, that was a pretty easy question for me, because it's one that works in all of them. I told him to use the Peak all makes and all models coolant, because it's formulated to work with all the cars. And that way, if you plan to use it as a top-off fluid, you can buy 1 gallon and put water in with it, and then have another jug for the second half, and then pour water in it. You can actually have 2 gallons of diluted antifreeze, and it will go. You can use it for top-off fluids, and again, that's all makes all models.
And you can probably buy it pre-mixed if you don't want to have 2 gallons on hand, and you got 2 different model cars at home. You don't have to have various solutions around because they're keyed to all styles.
Yeah, and I think Sid sounded happy with that tip, because he was concerned. There were so many different kinds of antifreeze, and he wasn't sure what type to use, and I was able to mention that to him, and he was able to just go in and get one type antifreeze, and actually he can use it in several of his cars to be able to go. So that's the peak antifreeze. It does very well. Okay. Again, we're here at Augusta Aviation, and we are live on remote, but we want you to put your chair, the back of your chair, back in the upright position, and we want you to buckle your seatbelts and put your tray in the lock position, because we'll be doing a touch and go. So so with the help of Jim Pate, Mason Rogers and Jacob Johnson will be back in the air very shortly with more.
A little connecting flight action coming up here.
We will have a connecting flight. But this has been a lot of fun. We've talked to so many wonderful people. We've had such a good time in the flight simulator.
Well, it's a neat place. They got a lot of neat things here, and it's a local place for the folks here in Augusta. So I'm sure there's, wherever you're listening to this, you've got small airports near you one way or another, unless you're in a big city, but they're interesting places.
Well, even the larger cities, most all have smaller airports in different places around the city, and it's encourage anyone that's interested in a career in aviation to go visit the airport. Just walk around a little bit and talk to the people there, and there's just a lot of really good opportunities that you can take. And when we return for our next hour, we'll be talking with Becky Shealy. We also have a air traffic controller that we'll be talking to, Mr. Jake Lewis, and we hope to hear from a commercial pilot and calling in, a good friend of mine. That's all. More of the C&C Auto Show when we return.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
The VP of Charter.
So Becky does a lot of stuff here at Augusta Aviation. I can tell you that. I promise you. And when I was thinking of things to do with aviation administration, of course, I thought of Becky. But also the other thing is, I know that Becky has a love for aircraft also. Is that right?
I do. I'll tell you, the way I got started was right after I graduated from high school. I had an opportunity to be the hangar clerk at Garrett Aviation at Bushfield, and I was there for a little over 13 years. Steve Gay, the owner of Augusta Aviation, called me and asked me if I was interested in coming to work for him as his marketing person for the Boshier Skyfest. You remember that?
I do.
The second
memories.
oh gosh, yeah, the second big air show we had out there. I worked under Steve for trying to get the marketing done. That was my degree in college, was marketing. And from there, I just stayed on with Steve, and here we are 21 years later, and I am so grateful that I have another person working with me. Her name's Amelia Gay, and she's done a phenomenal job. She's been with us since March. Wow. And with all the other things that I have going on, it's just been incredible to have her to help me. So I also do the scheduling for Charter. There are 4 charter schedulers. So I have 1 weekend a month, and every Monday night and Tuesday full day for dispatching Charter.
Wow. I have a lot of good memories here. James, I spent a huge amount of time at this airport right here. Now it has it is beautiful. Now I enjoyed it before because it was just it was an airport we used to come and hang out. I'd spent hours and hours here on the weekends. Now it's just everything looks so nice here at the airport. We have the beautiful pictures all around that have to do with aviation.
Yeah, and the historical photos shows you what happened here over many years now. I mean, there's a picture down here with President Eisenhower. That's a ways back now.
Yeah.
And I have to say, there's a lot of corporations that sponsored these history boards. Frank Christian, I'm sure that's the name you remember.
Yeah,
He
I
was
do.
the one. This was his brainchild, and he was able to get a couple of people to sponsor the boards, and we're very pleased.
Yeah. And then right behind us, we have a flight simulator.
We have a full motion flight simulator. It's FAA certified, and we're excited. This is part of the curriculum for our flight training. So whether you're a private student or an instrument student or going in for your commercial, your curriculum is going to require that you be in the simulator, and it actually is going to save you money because this is a whole lot more economical than trying to learn those maneuvers up in the air when you're renting the aircraft.
Now, what's some of the other areas of administration work that people can get into in the aviation industry? Because, of course, we all think of flight instructors, we think of pilots, we think of aerobatics, all of these things having to do with flying. But there's so many other areas of the aviation industry that people can get into.
Well, one thing that I didn't mention is Steve Gay and we co-manage the Daniel Field Airport. So airport management it can be frustrating at times, and it can be rewarding. I mean, you are working with the FAA, and you're working with, if you're here in Georgia, you're working with GDOT, Georgia Department of Transportation, to assure that you're getting the grant money to maintain the airport. And there's a lot to learn there, but it can be rewarding.
Oh, yes. I imagine one thing that's got to be very rewarding is when you see a young person come here and start out, and then you hear of them doing things like Garrett that we talked to a little bit earlier, that moved on to go into the Air National Guard, flying C-130s. And I know of several that I was training with when I was here that went on to fly in the military, F-15s, and flying for commercial airliners now, and just so many have moved on to do wonderful things in aviation.
That's what makes it all worthwhile. When you see these students come in, we get excited about people getting excited about learning to fly. And when you see these students come in and then they go all the way through, and then they come back and tell you, I'm flying C-130s, or I'm flying F-15s, or I'm flying for Walmart. I mean, we've had numerous success stories like that.
Now, speaking of students, I was wondering, we have a student over here, don't we?
Yes, where
Let's
is
try to
Jalen?
talk her into coming over here. I talked with her just a little
Where'd she go?
earlier, and she might be in the flight simulator.
Oh, I think she is.
Yeah, she is behind.
She is.
Ask them to hit pause on the flight simulator, and she'll come out and talk to us.
Okay.
All right, there we go. Okay, and she's in the flight simulator, and they will be getting her to come out in just a few minutes. But when we talk to Jolene, we're going to talk to a few things that is necessary that you do as you're taking your flying lessons. And one of the items would be to log your hours, so that number of hours is used to show the progression of what you've done so far as being able to move forward and solo, be able to make cross-country trips. There's just so many things that's dependent on, so you log it. And not to mention, years from now, you'll look back at your logbook and you'll say, wow, this is I remember that trip, or I remember this trip. And you're able to get so many things. Okay, Jolene is coming in. Oh, she's already got her earbud on, and now I did cut that off, so you got to cut it back on. Okay, we have Jalen Lida. Lida. Okay, we really appreciate you being here. Now, tell us how old you are.
I'm 16 years old.
That is amazing. 16 years old, and you're flying. How many hours do you have?
Currently 3.
3 hours. Okay, so you are just getting cranked up really good. So you looking forward to that first solo flight?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's going to be amazing.
How far off is that? How many hours do you have to fly before you do solo?
About 20.
Well,
or
that
so.
won't take too long, but there's a little study work and simulator work in the meantime, which is just where you are now.
Well, that's another question. I've seen you in the simulator, which is huge. That's a great thing. But also, do you the ground school? Have you been? Do you take ground school here, or what do you do?
So I go online to like Gold Seal, and I do their online there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that is that to me was a huge amount of fun because you learn so many things in ground school about weather, and what actually makes the airplane fly, and all the controls, and just so many other things that you learn in ground school. That there's things it will help you in whatever field you go into. Ground school for aviation will help you do better at it. Now, I seen you looking at your logbook a little earlier. Now, tell us a little bit about the logbook, what it does.
Well, it logs your hours,
Uh-huh.
and my instructor will put in what we did for the lesson.
Okay. So if you go out for a flight and you two talk a little bit, you get in the aircraft, you do the pre-flight, and you jump in, you go on a flight, you gain a little experience in that particular lesson, whatever it might be. Have you done stalls yet?
In the simulator, a little bit.
Oh,
yes,
you
sir.
did? You'll love those. Stalls are a lot of fun. But you'll do all these things, and then you'll come back, and your flight instructor will sign the logbook. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then that's how you tell when you're getting close to being able to do the solo flight.
Yeah.
Okay. Jaylene, I tell you, you've been amazing.
Good sport.
And
Good sport.
16 years old and getting your pilot's license, that's exciting.
Wow.
Really is good. Well, good luck. And we appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
And we'll
Thank
be
you very
back with
much.
more of the C&C Auto Show.
A little bit of everything, but as far as the maintenance side of aviation, at Augusta Aviation, we do a little bit of flight training, charter, general aviation, people coming in, so quite a variety but it's all aircraft maintenance.
Gets a little busy around Masters Week, I guess.
Oh, yes, sir.
Do you feel like that the largest portion of what you do as far as working with aircraft, is it mostly maintenance inspections, or do you have actual problems that somebody has and says, hey, this instrument's not correct, or this is not doing what it's supposed to do?
I'd say it's a good mix. It's probably maybe 50-50. You know, you have a lot of standard inspections as aircraft have to have at least an annual inspection, and then those for hire have even more stringent policies for inspections, of course. But then, you know, people get flat tires just like cars and things like that happen daily, and you never know what it's going to be.
Yeah. Over the years, that changed a lot in the automotive industry. It used to be many years ago, I would say about 70% of the cars that come into a shop was broke cars. Something, alternator out, AC compressor out, or something needed to be replaced. Over the years, that's almost flip-flopped. I would say about 70% of the work that comes into the shop has to do with vehicle maintenance. People wanting to do things to make their vehicles last longer than ever before, so they're having the maintenance done, and that's made it to where we have less actual broken cars. And that's exactly what you want on an airplane.
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, you don't want an issue in the air. You want to catch it well ahead of time.
Yeah. Do you ever get people that feel a little nervous when they bring it in and say, hey, I'm due for my annual, and they start being a little nervous?
Yeah, you know, you have that conversation up front, you know, the so to speak fine print. You got to be honest and say, hey, we know what we expect to find, but then you never know what you're going to find when you go in there. But that's the thing with the annuals. We're very, very thorough, you know, spinner to tail, so to speak. We open everything up and look very detailed at everything so that you avoid those issues, so that hopefully it is a very minor thing, not any kind of major thing.
And so some folks who live in the rural areas have common grass fields where they have planes and so forth, so they're not going to have service facilities there. So do you get, as Aaron would get, with people who park their cars at home, for those individuals who park their planes at home, do they call you, make a service appointment, oh, something's not right, but I know I can fly it still there, and they'll come in for maintenance, repairs, and inspections without having passed through the airport for travel purposes?
Yes, sir. That's actually almost a daily occurrence. I have a gentleman that pretty much handles those calls, and we are very limited on being able to go off-site, of course, because of the tooling and things that we need to work on aircraft. But we do occasionally go out to Bushfield if a plane is stuck, or, you know, a lot of times we'll get a call and they'll say, "What do you think?" Which we have to be very careful, of course, you know, trying to diagnose over the phone. But they do a lot of times make an appointment, come in and have us go ahead and fix the issue.
So you do a little telehealth where you can.
Where we can. We try to give them the best information that we can so that they can make a decision on the aircraft.
Some special fine print there. We're not saying it's this, so it could be something else, so don't fly it if you shouldn't, but still, that's interesting. So you can actually have service appointments.
Yeah, well, safety is paramount, and of course, as the pilot in command, as the person who's flying that aircraft, they need to make that decision, and we always encourage them to err on the side of caution, you know, to make sure that they know what's going on before they, so to speak, start the aircraft.
And I think a lot of people who drive it on the ground, because this is a show about all modes of transportation, of course, but there's many people who should have a similar philosophy about their automobiles before they go venturing off, because, as Aaron said before, many years ago, they weren't gas stations, they were service stations, and you could afford to have a breakdown almost anywhere along Route 66 or Route 70 up north or something like that, where you can no longer really do that because you need to prepare ahead of time. And planes got no choice. You really do.
Yeah. Now, of course, with the aircraft, most aircraft have to have an annual inspection.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct? And then they have a certain number of hours that they have to have an overhaul.
Yeah, so there's life-limited parts, so the engine especially, and then components on the engine, different hydraulic systems, etc. The more complicated the aircraft, the more engines, the more, you know, if you have hydraulic landing gear, things like that are going to have timed items as well, so that you're not responding to a problem. Hopefully you're catching it well ahead of time.
Yeah. We and cars are moving in that direction more and more. Of course, we got a long way to go, because many times people just run them until it's time to till something big happens. But more and more people are doing a lot of maintenance. What's some of the more common type aircraft that you work with?
Honestly, we see quite a variety, mostly general aviation, so privately owned aircraft, mostly single engine as far as our what we call our transient customers that come to us flying in for work, and that can be Cessna, Piper, Mooney, Beechcraft, you name it, we see it. We also, of course, maintain our training aircraft, some Cessnas and Pipers, and then we operate Beechcraft, King Airs for our charter department, so that's kind of a variety that we primarily work with.
Do you love the new technology on the aircraft?
Oh, I absolutely love it. I do avionics as well, and I have a full-time avionics guy, and all the new latest things, the safety margins that they're bringing, and just the I love all the technology that goes with it as well.
Yeah.
Must have a pretty big parts department here, because I don't know that you can scoot across to O'Reilly or AutoZone and get what you need.
Yeah, we have a full-time parts manager, and she stays very busy. And I don't know as much as the car world, but I know in aviation it is harder on certain parts to get them. So a lot of times she's trying to stay well ahead of time getting those parts on the way to us if we find we need something that's not stocked.
Well, Chris, you have been absolutely awesome. And if someone was interested in aviation maintenance, they have to work toward getting an A&P license. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct. So A&P is airframe and power plant. It's actually 2 licenses, but most people have both that are aircraft mechanics. And it's a 2-year program. We actually have a great school locally, Augusta Tech, that's over there. And you can go for 2 years. You can also do 30 months on-the-job experience. And we've done that as well with some of our mechanics in-house. So
that is awesome. I appreciate you being here with us and sharing some of the insight in aircraft maintenance. Great opportunity for a lot of people that are looking for a career.
Another aspect that many people might not think about, young folks especially coming up, a way to have a different type of technical and mechanical career.
Exactly. So for those listening in this area, Augusta Tech has that program, but those listening in other areas, if you're interested in a career in aircraft maintenance, check on one of your tech schools, nearby tech schools, and discuss it with people. Go to the airport. I'm sure that there's people there you can talk to. Chris, again, we appreciate you being here. And we are going to land just for a second or two, but when we return, we will be talking to Air Traffic Controller Jake Lewis. We'll be back after this.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I've been an air traffic controller for about 10 years now. I've been doing it for a while.
Jake, tell us a little bit about exactly what an air traffic controller does, and also tell us a little about how you got into that field.
Sure, yeah. So air traffic controllers, basically our job is to sequence and separate aircraft and to, keep aircraft apart, get them down on the ground safely and in the air safely, and to and from the ramp and the parking spot. How I got into the career field myself was I joined the Air Force in 2013 and started the job there and did my training in Biloxi, Mississippi, and then was stationed in South Georgia at Moody Air Force Base.
Well, Jake, my big question is, how do you learn to talk so fast for so long?
Sure, yeah. We don't actually go to auctioneer school, unfortunately, but we do train a lot. So we learn a lot. We stay in the books a lot. We memorize. A lot of memorization and a lot of muscle memory. So the way we speak so fast is we kind of anticipate, have plans A through Z, and have our words ready to go whenever it's time. So we speak so fast because sometimes we need to. Sometimes we have 4 airplanes going to meet at the same spot, and we need to turn them and get them joined final and get them slowed down, spacing adequate properly, and so we got to be on our P's and Q's, and so it's just a lot of muscle memory, a lot of repetition, and that's how we learn to speak so fast.
And I think there's another aspect to it, isn't there, where while you're at a particular airport at a tower, managing, getting the plane down, getting it up, getting it to and from the gate, you have to receive a plane and you have to give a plane away, sort of a baton theory, maybe, if I'm using the wrong word, but you'll transfer that plane to another radio frequency and to another controller as they move away from you, and you've got to be able to receive them as they're coming in. Is there that aspect as well?
Yeah. So there's usually a team of controllers in the tower or in the radar, and so we have to transfer them from one person to another. We have to give them their clearance, then ground gets them from the clearance, and they taxi them to the runway, and then the ground controller will put them over to the tower controller, and the tower controller will launch them in the air, and then the tower controller will switch them to the radar controller. And so it's just an intertwined network of all these different controllers that are all working together for the same goal.
So you'd be good in one of those crowds where everybody's talking at the same time. You can understand all of them, I bet.
Yeah, I hear it. I hear it all the time, yep. But I may not understand it all, but I can make out bits and pieces for sure.
Well, Jake, I can tell you that when I was in flight training, one of the most anxiety-filled moments was when you were working with air traffic controllers, because the air traffic controller does not have time to play around and make short conversation. They are boom, 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 firing it off. So what I did, and I'm sure a lot of other people do this, is I bought an audio of a air traffic control system, and I'd be driving to work and I'd be hearing air traffic control, and I would get used to when they said something, I would say it back. If I remember right, the audio was designed for that. It would give a clearance of some kind, and I'd have to repeat it back, and that did help me a huge amount on being able to keep up with you guys.
Yeah, that's important. Like I said, our job is a lot of repetition and a lot of, obviously our ears have to work very well. So we have to be attentive and pay attention, and that's important. I would advocate for that for anyone that's interested in this career field to listen to air traffic control talk. I think there's a website called Live ATC where you can listen to live air traffic control. You can get on there and listen, and then you talk to yourself and read it back and do that. That is a fantastic idea.
I think I remember
with people like that. I think it's important.
And I remember waiting for a flight to come in. I was picking someone up. It was Newark Airport. You wanted to know when a plane was landing. If you knew the frequency, you could hear Continental so-and-so, come on in, and then you knew that was about time to go get your passenger.
Yeah. Jake,
Right.
and that is fun to listen to that. A lot of fun. Now, Jake, if I'm not mistaken, well, I know this is a fact, but if a pilot is having an issue of some kind, you all of a sudden become that pilot's best friend. Is that right?
Right. Yes, sir. Yeah, we like I said, safety's our goal, our number one goal. You know, we want everyone to be safe and expeditious in the safest way possible. So yeah, we are the calm voice on the other end of the radio to help them work through anything that they're going through.
Well, that's what I found over the years. If there's a problem, and you would climb and confess, that's it, and you guys would always just whatever you needed to do to help that person out, you would do it very quickly. Also,
Right. Yes, sir. Yeah, we've got checklists that we run through to make sure that everything is followed and adhered to, and everyone's safe. So we try to remain as calm as possible. And give the best advice and the best priority to those that need the help.
Yeah, and there's very little inflection or raising or lowering of tone in the voice when I've heard it. It's always very consistent, very uniform, so that I think it keeps everybody understanding their commands in as short a period of time as possible for each command, while also being calming at the same time. It's always very monotone.
keeps the person calm. That's a beautiful point there.
Right.
Jake, I was going to ask you, we got about a minute.
Yeah, that's the goal. That's the goal.
What would, if a person was interested in becoming an air traffic controller, what would be some of the steps that they should take? And keep in mind, a lot of listeners may not be in this area. So what's a good way for them to be able to get information on this?
Sure. Yeah, there's a few avenues you could go. You could do what I did. I joined the military, and then I got out and worked for the FAA. You could go to what's called a CTI school, Approved Air Traffic Collegiate Training Initiative. There's a few of those schools all across the country. And there's one in South Georgia called Advanced ATC. You work on the job. They train you. You work on the job, and then you can get hired in previous experience. However, the FAA does hire people off the street with no experience, and then they'll train them themselves in Oklahoma City at the schoolhouse. To do that, you need to be looking online. There's a website for government jobs. It's called usajobs.gov. And if you keep an eye out on there, sometimes they'll put out these opportunities for people who have no air traffic experience to apply. And if you get selected and go through the initial hiring phase of the testing and all that stuff, if they deem you a candidate for the job, then they'll send you to Oklahoma City and they'll train you, and you'll get sent to your first facility afterwards.
Well, Jake, that is awesome. And we appreciate you being here with the show, being on the show with us. And thank you for sharing all the information. And we do welcome you back to the C&C Auto Show. We're live at Augusta Aviation in Augusta, Georgia, located at Daniel Field Airport, and we're having a great time. We're talking about the automotive industry, and we're talking about the aviation industry. I guess that would be Wings and Wheels.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I don't care who you are. That's a great song. Airplanes or not, they just went by. That's a good one.
Yes, it is. And the number to call, 800-224-9090. If you got a question about aviation or a question about cars, don't hesitate to give us a call.
Yep.
And we have been doing some great things. But they have this simulator behind us, and I think this has been a great thing for Augusta Aviation and a great thing for a lot of other airports around the country, because the pilots are able to actually, in many cases, if it's certified to do it, in many cases can actually log their hours, and it count toward some of their training. Which is a big deal, because it's those hours are sometimes very hard to come by. You got to not only make time to do it, but you have to have time to set it up with the instructor. You have to log the hours, and it's being able to come up and really get the training in a way to where Chris Young, the chief flight instructor, was talking about. to be able to hit pause, discuss what just happened or what needs to happen, can be very, very beneficial in the training process.
And while it's obviously a tremendously expensive machine, you can combine the simulator with, as the student said before, she does some online classwork. But here, you could come here on a miserable day and fly in all different flight conditions. You could, I guess, I don't know if they do it, but you could fly at night, even though you're not qualified to fly at night, and here in the simulator and accumulate the qualifying time and training that you need. So the savings of time and the flexibility of your schedule just goes way up because it's always here, and you don't have to have the mechanics of the plane available to you.
A huge number of benefits. And Jim, I'm gonna lay a tech tip quiz out. I'm gonna let you be the one to answer the tech tip quiz. We only have a short period of time, but here is the tech tip quiz. Most of you know that my friend Chris Krug has a jet-powered minivan.
He sure does.
Well, his friend Rob has a caravan that he was able to travel from Augusta, Georgia to Atlanta, Georgia in less than an hour without getting a speeding ticket. And we, if someone knows the answer to that, 800-224-9090. And we're going to see if anybody in the room here knows the answer to that question. We have all these aviation minds in here that that may be able to answer that question. Does anyone in the room know the answer to the tech tip quiz? Come on, somebody has to know it.
I think some of them are still having their breakfast and not listening to you and me.
All right, I'm going to read the question one more time. Most of you know my friend Chris Krug. He's got a jet-powered minivan. Has anybody seen my friend Chris Krug's jet-powered minivan?
Oh, they haven't lived yet.
It's a beautiful sight. You punch a button, back window comes open, jet engine pops out. I've ridden in the van before. It's a beautiful thing, but it's fast. It's a pretty fast van. Well, my friend Rob, he has a caravan, and he was able to travel from Augusta, Georgia to Atlanta, which, what is that, normally two and a half hour trip there, but he did it in less than an hour in a caravan, and he didn't get a speeding ticket.
From the A&D Carpets and Hardwood Floor Studios, this is WGAC AM Augusta, WGAC FM Harlem, and W270CY, a Beasley Media Group station.
Well, you can't answer a question with a question. You got to come over here and give the answer.
All right, so if someone knows the answer, come on over.
There's a prize package at stake, isn't there?
Yes, prize package. You get a C&C Auto Show coffee mug. You get a C&C Auto Show shirt. So we are looking for a winner for today's Tech Tip Quiz. We got someone that...
Somebody coming in on the line, so we're going to give that a shot.
Let's see what we got here.
Got a couple minutes left to be the big winner.
And I wanted to answer with a tech. Let's see here.
Looks like is it Carol?
And Carol, welcome to the C&C Auto Show. And what is the answer to today's Tech Tip Quiz?
I think you would be flying.
Say it again.
You would be flying in an airplane.
Oh, are you saying that there is a chance that this aircraft is not a Dodge Caravan, but it may be a Cessna Caravan? Is that possible?
Yes.
All right, you are absolutely right. It was a Cessna 208 Caravan. It's used for cargo, and it can seat up to about 14 passengers. It's a really big workhorse. And you're the winner now, and you will receive.
Thank you very much.
Oh, listen to that!
Crowd is going wild. Listen to all the people. It's a big moment for you.
Oh, listen to them! The crowd's going wild.
Yes.
And Carol, you are the winner of today's Tech Tip Quiz, and congratulations!
So yeah, just hang in there, and part of our flight crew here will get your information so that you can get your prize package, so you can wear that hat and that shirt out there in big time and drink from that mug.
Yes. And
it's a life-changing event.
Thank you.
Life-changing event. So don't hang up. Don't hang up.
Okay, and we have had a great time. It's been a great show. Lots of fun. We talked to Gary Ward, who is just an awesome aerobatic pilot, and we talked to Becky Sheely, and she was there with us. And we talked to Garrett Timmerman. He was flew the C-130s.
Yep.
Beautiful deal there. And we also talked to Jake, who's a air traffic controller, and we talked to Gary Timmerman. Well, I mentioned Gary Timmerman, the C-130 pilot. It's just been a great show. We've had a good time, and I want to remind everybody that there's a lot of great fields in the aviation industry. Do some research and see if there's something there that you may enjoy. And it's I think one of the things I like about the aviation industry, very much like the automotive industry, is the people. You just have such wonderful people, very tight-knit. They're all here eating breakfast this morning together at the airport.
You're going to get tight-knit with them in a minute and join in on that breakfast part.
Yes, I'm going to join in on that. But I do have one caution. There is a chance that if you visit an airport and you get in the airplane and you fly one time, you can get hooked. It can happen because it happened to me. Beautiful, though.
Well, and it's obviously not easy. You really got to pay attention to what you're doing at all times, and there's a lot of work going into it for obvious reasons.
But it teaches you more than just aviation. It teaches you more than flying. It teaches you a lot of good lessons about life. One example, a flight instructor of mine one time told me, he said, Aaron, if it's a lot of those instruments duplicate each other, but if it's there, use it. That way, if you can tell if something's wrong in a different area by comparing two other ones with it. Okay, with that, raise your seats back into upright position. Buckle your seatbelts. Put that tray in the lock position. We'll be landing the C&C Auto Show. I want to say thank you to James.
And right on time as always, this flight.
We are. Thank you, James Pate. Great co-host. Mason Rogers, Jacob Johnson, and we'll be back with more of the C&C Auto Show next week.